Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll give it a few more minutes before we get started as folks start logging in. Thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday morning. We'll get started in a few minutes as attendees log in and get situated. All right, I'll go ahead and get us started. It is 11:01. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody, for today's session. My name is Isis Lopez. I am the Engagement Manager for the Development Services Department, a department of the City of Austin. Today's session is part of a newly created community-focused educational series that we call DSD Info Series, where we offer both online and in-person and virtual classes about our services. We talk about our programs, and we offer guidance from our experts and insight on different topics. We had a few ones a few weeks ago. The very first one we talked about if you don't know where to get started, who to go to, and we introduced you to our development process team, and we introduced this to a group called the Neighborhood Assistance Center. Those are for our homeowners or small businesses and for our neighborhood groups who would like to learn more about development. That was our first session. And then we had several more on home and the home initiative. We had one on what is called Home Phase 1 a few weeks ago, and we had one specifically on technical requirements for tiny homes. I'll note that those are going to be available in our public input website. We will link it in the chat, and that is publicinput.com/DSD info series. You can check out the recording and you can check out the presentation as well. We had folks from our DSD staff members, and we had folks from other departments talk about everything that had to do with Phase 1. And we also talked about the technical requirements under Phase 1 and as it came to tiny homes. So check those out if you missed them. Today, specifically, we will be talking about building under homes, specifically what we call Phase 2. This is part of the 3-part series where we talk about home. We have a few subject matter experts in the room today, in the virtual room. Our main presenter is Alyssa Mayfield. She is a Plans Examiner C with Development Services, but as y'all may know, development happens in partnership with many other departments. So in the room, we have other staff members to help with questions. We have representatives here with us today from Watershed Protection Department. We have representatives from Austin Water, Austin Energy, and Austin Fire. Make sure, again, the link to the website is in the chat. Take a look at our recordings. And then we will also be posting, we'll have a few upcoming sessions about different topics that might be of interest to you. So check them out as we publish them, again, under that page. Next slide, please. Before we get started with today's session and with all the information we have to share with you today, I want to overview a little bit about the format. I'll first say that this presentation is being recorded, and so the information that you see today is recorded along with the Q&A portion toward the end. We will have a presentation by Alyssa followed by question and answer session. You'll have the opportunity to participate in 2 ways. So you can raise your hand using the raise hand function on the control panel on Zoom, and then we will call on you, or you can write your questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Every Zoom should be equipped with that. If you can't find it, shoot us a message on chat and we will help troubleshoot that for you. It's helpful, I'll note, while it's tempting to put the questions on the chat, it is helpful for us to have them on the Q&A session because it helps us keep track of the ones that we've answered, and then you can view them as we answer them. So we want to make sure that we answer as many questions as possible. We will try to get to the most questions as we can. There might be information that we don't have readily available or that we might not have time for. So I'll disclaimer that we will answer to the best of our abilities. And then afterward, we will compile all of those questions and send a summary to our participants. folks who registered and folks who have attended so that you can take a look at what was asked and review it. All right, with that, I will then now turn it over to Alyssa Mayfield, who will kick off today's presentation. Alyssa?
Thank you, Ulysses. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. I'm Alyssa Mayfield. Today, we're going to spend our time talking about what is commonly known as home, and specifically phase 2 of home. I'll talk about what it is, a bit of history when it was passed and its purpose, in addition to key terminology, updated standards, followed by a question and answer portion. We will also overview the different phases and what they mean. So let's get started. Next slide. So a little bit of history and how we got here. HOME stands for Home Options for Mobility and Equity. We're also known as Austin's Home Options for Middle Income Empowerment. These code amendments are among a series of updates to the city's Land Development Code, further known as the LDC, which governs land use regulations in our city, dictating what can be built, where it can be built, and how much can be built. It has undergone numerous amendments since its adoption in the mid-1980s, responding to changing policy goals. In July of 2023, City Council passed a resolution to facilitate the availability of smaller, more diverse housing types and to allow more housing units on single-family lots. It focused on the creation of infill development options for single-family neighborhoods. The goal of these changes is to provide more housing types and increase housing supply within single-family zoned areas of Austin. The target population is lower and middle-income homeowners. Before home, previously 3 units were not allowed on SF1, SF2, SF3 zone properties, and rezoning would be required. Next slide. So a little bit of a timeline. In addition to the history of the goal and purpose of home, we also wanted to overview a bit of when things were implemented. The changes are relatively new, and we are excited to continue spreading educational resources about them. Phase 1 was adopted on December 7th, 2023, and went into effect on February 5th, 2024. Phase 2 was adopted in May 16th, 2024, and went into effect August 2024. Today, we will be overviewing the changes that are part of the second phase. Next slide. So phase 1 only applies to duplexes, 2-unit residential, and 3-unit residential uses. The new regulations do not apply to single-family residential use, which will continue to be reviewed under existing regulations, including Subchapter F. From a zoning perspective, a tiny home will be reviewed as another unit or dwelling. Next slide. So these diagrams show the key differences between home phase 1 and 2. On the left, you can see 3 units on one lot with no property lines between the units. These units could be owned by a single owner or have a condo regime that allows separate ownership of the structures and shared ownership of the land. On the right, Home 2 allows for individual units on individual parcels. While the Home Phase 2 ordinance is primarily a zoning change, first step of most projects will actually be subdivision of the lots. Next slide. So some highlights of phase 2. Small lot single family is now allowed on uses in SF1, is an allowed use on SF1, 2, and 3. This reduces the minimum lot size from 5,750 square feet to 1,800 square feet for one unit. In addition to reducing the minimum lot size, the ordinance creates specific development regulations that are tailored to small lot development. Even though there are new regulations for this use, the entitlements allowed for each unit is roughly proportional to what was allowed per unit in home under Home 1. The ordinance reduced site development standards to accommodate smaller lot sizes, including floor area ratio, lot width, setbacks, and design standards. In addition to revised zoning standards, the ordinance updated flag lot standards to in the subdivision chapter and some of the methodologies to measure lot width to accommodate smaller lot design. Next slide. So what is small lot single family use? It is defined as the use of a small lot for only one dwelling unit other than a mobile home. Small lot is defined as a lot with an area of less than 5750 square feet. Therefore, a small lot single family use is a single unit on a lot that is less than 5750 square feet. Prior to this ordinance, small lot single family use was only permitted in a handful of more intense zones and in practicality used almost exclusively in SF4A zoning districts. The revised site development standards adopted by this ordinance are specific to this use and can be found in Chapter 25.2, Subchapter C, Article 4, in the additional requirements for certain uses in the Land Development Code. Next slide. So part of the utilization of the small single family home, these single family residential uses are required to be used on a lot that is less than 5750 square feet. And there are only two ways to utilize the new use. The first is an existing small lot in SF1, 2, or 3. Prior to home, if you had a lot that was less than 5750 in SF2 or 3 or 10,000 square feet in SF1, the lot was considered substandard and would only be able to develop according to the substandard lot provisions in section 25.2.943. With the passage of Home 2, any lot that is at least 1,800 square feet can be developed with a single unit and is no longer considered substandard, but is instead considered a small lot, single family lot. Those lots that are less than 5750 can now submit directly to residential plan review for their single unit development. If a lot is greater than 5750 square feet, it must be re-subdivided into small lots before being able to use small lot single family use. Use of the info ordinance, which we are going to discuss later, will assist in the subdivision of existing residential lots. Next slide. So some of the regulations, a small lot, single family lot must be at least 1,800 square feet, but less than 5750 square feet. If a lot is larger than 5750 square feet, an applicant would have to apply for a subdivision to create lots of less than 5750 square feet or develop a standard single family, 2-unit, duplex, or 3-unit residential use. And this image here just shows how that can be accomplished on a corner by subdividing those lots down into 3 separate lots. Next slide. So with the adoption of Home 2, the site development standards were reduced. So this is a summary table of the new site development standards for small lot single family, with the standards for single family uses provided for context. So you can see previously what was required under SF1, 2, and 3, and then what was adopted and can be used with Home 2. And I want to point out that both single family and small lot single family are separate allowed uses in SF1, 2, and 3. So all of the standards in this chart are still applicable to a single unit in SF1, 2, and 3. Which standards apply is determined by your lot size. If your lot is less than 5750 square feet, the small lot single family regulations would apply. If your lot is 5750 square feet or greater, the single family use requirements would apply. As we will be discussing each of these in more detail next, I will just point out a few features that aren't expounded on later. First, as indicated by the name, only one unit is allowed on each of the small lots. The impervious cover and height are still determined by the base zoning district, and building cover is eliminated. Next slide. So with the adoption of Home 2, the lot widths, the minimum lot widths were updated. So the diagram on the right shows the typical lot types, the first being a standard lot and the second being a flag lot. A flag lot consists of two parts: the flag, which is the larger developable portion of the lot, and the flagpole, which is the skinnier portion that provides street access to the lot. A standard lot must be at least 15 feet wide. The flag portion of a flag lot must be at least 20 feet wide. The minimum width of the flagpole must be at least 5 feet and may be required to be wider based on the type of driveway being proposed and the number of units. Next slide. So with Home 2, there were updated setbacks. Let's talk about what a setback is. A setback line means a line within a lot parallel and measured from a corresponding lot line, forming the boundary of a yard and governing the placement of structures and uses on the lot. For most lots, these are standard setbacks that will be applicable to the site. So as you can see, side street setback is 5 to 10 feet, depending on the street level and distance from the property line or curb. Front setback is 5 to 10 feet, depending on if the lot is a standard lot or flag lot. The side setback is 5 feet, and the rear setback is 5 feet. Next slide. So with the adoption of Home 2, some design standards were set into place to regulate certain aesthetics of residential properties. In this case, the section has included regulations on garage placement, some porches and parking placement, and impervious cover in the front yard. The front yard is limited to 40% impervious cover with less than 4 parking spots in the front yard, which with these lot sizes, I wouldn't think that would be as common. And then the regulation also minimizes the mass and impact of garages along the front. If the parking structure is greater than 20 feet behind the building facade, no action is needed. But if the garage is less than 20 feet, the width of the parking structure may not exceed the width of the facade. Note that this is different than in the neighborhood garage placement tool prescribed in 25-1604. If a property is located within a neighborhood plan that has also adopted the garage placement tool, the neighborhood plan garage placement tool will supersede. Next slide. So within the subchapter F boundary, also known as McMansion, units have a size allowance. With Home 2, those size allowances have been updated. Units may be the greater of 1650 square feet or 55 FAR or floor area ratio, and the maximum unit size is 2,300 square feet. These numbers are similar in scale to the allowed units for 2-unit, 3-unit, and duplex. Next slide. So with Home 2, just recently, an infill ordinance was passed by council. This ordinance makes the subdivision process a little easier. It simplifies some of the non-zoning regulations, including drainage for projects under 1 acre. This chart above shows the general framework for the revised review process for infill projects. If the project is a residential subdivision of less than 17,780 square feet in size, there will be no drainage requirements. The code currently has a water quality exemption for projects with less than 8,000 square feet of impervious cover. 17,780 square feet is the lot area needed for 8,000 square feet of impervious cover in SF2 and 3, which is why this number was selected as the breaking point for no drainage regulations. This means that if you subdivide a project of 17,780 square feet, you are exempted from both drainage and water quality. If the project is a residential re-subdivision that is more than the 17,780 square feet, but less than the acre, then no on-site detention or drainage is required if the project naturally or via grading drains to the street or existing storm drain. With that said, a review and payment for the Regional Stormwater Management Program, known as RSMP, will not be required. And if the project cannot grade to drain to the street or storm drain, then the project may be permitted to utilize RSMP per Drainage Criteria Manual 1.2.2G. The final details of this process are still under development and will be addressed in the criteria manual. So this was just recently adopted, and they're still discussing as how to implement it, and will be implemented in the coming months, and how we will be processing these will also be discussed and implemented in the coming months. Next slide. So that's all I have, and I will hand it over back to ECs.
Thanks so much, Alyssa, for the information. The other thing we wanted to share is a few resources and links, and these will be available for participants. We have a link to the PDF copy of the adopted ordinance for the phase 1. We also have a link of the PDF copy of the ordinance for phase 2, in addition to the overview of development services details for home, including development standards and review under home. And we also have some historical web pages there as well for like the public input page, and then upcoming land development code amendments as well that are led by our planning department. Next slide, please. All right, now we have the portion for questions and answers. If you have any questions, you can participate in one of two ways. You can raise your hand in the control panel of Zoom, and if you have trouble, let us know and we can help you troubleshoot that. Or you can write them out in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We do have a few in the queue now, so I will go ahead and start with those, but feel free to raise your hand throughout, and I will alternate between the virtual ones and the online. If we can go to the next slide, please. That way we have, and before we get started, if you want to go ahead and give us some feedback on how we did for this session, I'll leave that up in the screen. You can either scan the QR code or copy that link. And if you want to join us at our next session, we will be posting them at publicinput.com/CSD info series. I'll leave that there for folks to take a look at. There are a few questions that have already been answered, and so I'll note that you are able to review them and take a look at the answers. One of the questions that was asked was about if you're building 1,800 square foot, are you required to have a garage in the driveway, or will street parking be allowed? One of our staff members created a response or wrote a response for that. So I will go ahead and ask one of the questions that has been asked virtually. Let me see. The question that we have, and Matt, I think this one's for you. I see you typing. How much does removing the drainage requirement save a homeowner building smaller than 17,000 square feet? I think that question is, Matt, I think you were in the process of answering that.
Fumbling around with my video here.
You're good.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so we staff are not going to have precise figures on this, but we did get a lot of input from our stakeholders throughout the process of the infill ordinance that we mentioned in the presentation. And so not having to design for that drainage, which might include a on-site flood detention pond, might include connecting to nearby storm drainage systems via underground pipes. That would be, substantial. So that's I think that was a pretty key part of that ordinance. I'm going to post this in the chat too.
Okay, awesome. The next question that we have from our attendee, they are asking, can you clarify the setbacks? There was a range listed in the slide. So if we can go back a few slides, Kimberly, who is doing our slide, I will tell you when to stop. Keep going. There. All right, go back one. There you go. So that's the slide on our update on the updated setback standards. Alyssa, do you want to expand a little bit more?
Yes. So again, the majority of the setbacks most of the time will be a 5-foot side, 5-foot rear, but depending on the street level can vary from 5 to 10 feet. So you can have a level 0, 1, or 2, and depending on the intensity, that setback may vary. Let me see if I have the it open to read specifically. Okay. So, and this also varies in regards to whether you have a flag lot or not. And so when you have a flag lot, the front setback is reduced for the flag lot portion so that you can have more development. But for a standard lot, the front setback would be 10 feet. It says 15, but it does, I think that is a typo. And it would be 10 to 5, depending on whether it is a front setback with a lot that is directly on a street, or 5 feet for the setback of a flag lot. And then again, the street side would differ depending on if it's a level or 1 or 2 street. And it can either go from the curb or the property line, whichever is greater.
We'll make sure we have that updated
Right.
slide.
Yeah. Yeah. And that code is specifically listed in the ordinance, which can be referenced through those resource links.
And I see our attendee who asked that question, Alyssa, has his hand up. So Hector, if you want to go ahead and speak, maybe you had additional thoughts or additional questions regarding your question, Hector. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, thanks for doing this. Are flag lots required if you have an alley? Can you use the alley as your frontage for a subdivided lot?
No, so an alley you cannot use as your frontage for a subdivided lot. But again, the frontage would be from wherever behind is, and mainly the flag is for utility purposes, because we do not cross lot lines with utilities, and so that is the reason for the pull of a flag lot. And usually the utilities don't come from the alley; they come from the main street. But that is a good question. And I might look more into it. But I think as of right now, an alley cannot be used as a frontage because it is not a maintained right of way by the city.
Yeah. Thanks, Alyssa. All right, and then I'll remind folks, there are a few questions on the question and answer portion that have already been answered by our staff, so make sure to check them out. We are answering them to the best of our ability. Those are being typed, and so you can go ahead and check them out. Thank you, Kimberly, for taking us back to that section. And we do have a member talking about in the chat. Is there a development staff member where we can schedule a meeting to review a property profile report? Alyssa, do you want to talk about scheduling time with development staff?
Yeah, so there's a free 20-minute walk-in that you can schedule with staff to ask questions about a property profile report to understand it further. Or if it's a commercial property, it would be with the Land Development Information Services. And then also there is a paid meeting called the Preliminary Plan Review, and that is usually for more in-depth projects that might be LA zoning or more unique one-off lots that have some difficulties, and that is through expedited plan review. But I would recommend the 20-minute walk-in with residential plan review first. And if they recommend you to a PPR, then you can follow that route.
All right. Thank you so much, Alyssa. We have another question from our attendee. They ask, is there an easier or faster process to subdivide qualifying residential lots? And then if we can talk about the time frame and how long it takes or how long it's expected to take. Alyssa, is that something you would talk about, or was that you, Chris?
That would be Chris or Matt. I'm not familiar with the subdivision process.
Yeah, and Chris, if you can talk a little bit about an expected time frame that it might take for the folks listening and for our customers as they might start in a project to subdivide the qualifying residential lots.
Sure. I mean, kind of like I was writing in terms of the response, it's difficult to put a number on it. And that's because the recently passed infill ordinance, which gave relaxed development standards for drainage and water quality for these types of projects, we haven't implemented them. We're still talking about how to implement them. And so that ordinance, even though it's passed, does not become effective until June 16th. So we've got a little bit of time to work on that. But the idea is that if today a 1 to 3 lot single family subdivision takes 6 months to get through the process, because there will be relaxed standards, it should not take 6 months. It should be a little bit easier by virtue of those relaxed standards. But like I said, it's not effective yet. We haven't worked on any projects yet. And we're still talking about how we're going to review. So, the best case scenario for everybody concerned is that the process doesn't take 6 months. So, but today to tell you how long it's going to take, I couldn't do that, unfortunately.
All right, thanks so much for your input, Chris, and thanks so much to our participant for asking those questions. And we will stay tuned in terms of that time frame and the effects on them. All right, we have another question in our Q&A bank, and I would like to remind folks, if you can please post them in the Q&A portion versus the chat function, that helps us keep track of the answers. We have a question, and Chris, I see you typing. I'm going to go ahead and call on that one. The question, one of our attendees is asking, does the infill ordinance apply to amended plats or just the re-subdivision plats?
Yeah, I just put the answer in there real quick. So there are two ordinances here that we're talking about in terms of subdivision. One is creating smaller lots, and the other is the infill ordinance that relaxes standards or requirements for drainage and water quality. Unfortunately, only the infill ordinance with the relaxed standards, it only applies to re-subdivisions, and that's in the ordinance. But that does not mean, however, that you cannot create small lots with an amending plat, for example. That you can do, but however, though, those relaxed standards do not necessarily apply to those types of projects.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, and thanks for the folks who are asking the questions. We have another question from our attendee that is asking, if there is a balcony on the first floor, does a 3 to 4 foot tall balcony wall become the most exterior wall the carport has to stay behind? So Alyssa, I don't know if that one's for you or John. So the question is, if there is a balcony, would that be?
I can take that one.
Go for it, John.
So by definition, a balcony, there's no such thing as a first floor balcony. That would be a porch. The definition of building facade listed in the Land Development Code, I believe, says porches don't count for your building facade. I think it says something about the the wall of the building. So I can pull that language up here and post it. But essentially, it would need to be the building, not a porch.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We also have another attendee who had previously asked for if there's a staff member available to schedule a review for property profile report. And I see, John, I see that you're typing the answer. They also asked, can you provide who to message? And so we'll provide that information as well in the chat. I would like to remind folks that there's a few questions that are being answered by our staff in the Q&A portion. If you would like to go ahead and review them, our staff is working to answer them live. As we are coming through this session, we will be providing a summary of these questions to the best of our abilities. We also included, we included a link to our appointments page where you can take a look and schedule an appointment for our staff as you do the work that you need to do for development. All right. I will give it a few more seconds to see if folks have any more questions that haven't been answered or that can be answered with the information available that we have. It looks like I don't have any in the queue at this moment. All right, with that, I will remind y'all to let us know how we did. The screen has our engagement survey where you can tell us how we did, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you feel can be improved. This helps us tailor meetings that will be helpful for you in the future. And then all of the recordings that we have had of our presentations will be available in that public input page, publicinput.com/DSD info series. So you can check them out if you missed any of them. The first one, again, we had was about if you don't know anything and you are maybe a homeowner, where to start. We introduced you to our development process team in our neighborhood assistance center. And we also we had 3 about homes specifically. Those will be available there and they will be archived there for you to take a look at and to view. Next slide, please. Thanks again for joining us on your Tuesday morning. Thanks for the questions that you've provided, and thanks to the staff and our participants from the other departments as we provide information to you and provide all of our resources and expertise. Appreciate you joining us. Join us at our next session that we will share at publicinput.com and let us know how we did. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Thank you for joining us.